For two people who are dating and they're serious about the next step, what would be some advice or steps that you would share with them?
Well, it doesn't matter what you share because they're not going to do it. When you're in love, you think things are just going to work out. Even if you actually have real conversations about what it's going to look, once you get in it, things will change because you'll change. I always talk about expectations when it comes to like finances, when it comes to sex, when it comes to splitting of responsibilities. Really have an honest discussion about expectations.
This is Caesar Walker, the cool, calm, collected one.
And I'm Ronnie Gatry, the emotional one.
And we are the Tipping Point Podcast, your source for the black male's perspective.
Tipping Point Podcast.
Peace and blessings, everyone. We want to welcome you to the latest and greatest episode. Shout out to all of our listeners and viewers, both new and old. Want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for tuning in, chopping it up with us. Gentlemen, we good?
Good.
Got a returning guest.
Immanuel Marsh.
Yeah,
and for those of you who don't know, I cold called this cold brother, I should say. I cold called him a few months ago. He picked up, he came on, recorded with us once, and agreed to come back. So I feel really good about that because most of our guests do not return, but we have one that does. Am I lying?
You're not lying. You're not wrong. But I think what's so cool about this is that a few months ago, he didn't even know who we were.
True.
So for him to want to come back and chop it up with us, it means a lot. So thanks to you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come through and hang with us, man. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me.
I can't say enough about your shirt. It's one of the best I've seen in a long time.
Well, I enjoy the podcast, so I enjoy coming back. Anytime y'all need me, I'm here.
Thanks, man.
So
That's awesome. Listen, let's get to it.
let's get to it.
Mr. Marsh, why is marriage so tough for so many people? Why is it so difficult?
Well, the answer is, let me ask, before I answer, why do you think it's so difficult?
To me, I think marriage holds a mirror up to you.
Okay.
And it puts pressure on you to work on yourself for the greater good of the relationship. And I think depending on whatever expectations a person may have, where they are in their life and maturity, that can be a challenge.
Okay. What about you? Yeah.
I couldn't have said any better, but and what I'm gonna say is kind of a derivative of what he says, but like we are focused on ourselves for so long up until we get married, and so now you mean to tell me I put a ring on her finger and now it's no longer about me? And I'm sure, and I'm speaking from my perspective, but I'm sure that happens on both sides. And so, people talk about the golden key to a fulfilling marriage is communication. And it is. Oh, come on, Marsh. Don't do this tonight. Don't do this tonight. It is.
I don't think it is, but that's just, I think it's one of those answers that sounds correct, but I don't think it is. Because and we'll talk about communication later because I know y'all.
Why do we have to wait? You ready there?
Because
Well, no, we still in
Because-
the pleasantries.
most of the time, yes, even there's like communication is the key, or people think that we will be better if we communicated better, but couples don't really have a hard time communicating. You're communicating exactly what you're trying to communicate, so you don't have a communication problem. You just don't like what's being communicated. If I roll my eyes every time you speak, what am I communicating?
You should say that you don't like what I'm saying.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
If I'm calling you names, what am I communicating? And so communication is a symptom of something else. And so that's why I hear what you're saying. It's key. It's helpful to be able to communicate well. But to do that, you kind of have to zoom out and look at, well, what's if that's a symptom, then what is, what's kind of wrapped up in why we communicate the way we do. And so to go back to the answer of like, why is marriage so complicated? It's because two different people. You're taking two different people with two different backgrounds, two different families, two different expectations of what a marriage is and isn't, two different expectations of what the role of a spouse is. Two different ways of communicating, two different styles of communicating, two different approaches to life. Yeah. And then you're cramming those things together and you just expect it to run smoothly. It's not going to happen. And so the friction is caused it's just two different people. Mm-hmm. That's what causes friction. That's one of the factors. It's not I don't say cause because that's too strong. That's one of the factors. And we're attracted to the people who we end up with are people who are different than us.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guarantee you that you didn't end up with a spouse that's like you.
No, not even close.
And I dated people who were like me, and we never had long distance relationship. We never lasted long.
That's crazy. Yeah.
But the people who were opposite me, that's who I end up with, and that's kind of what we get biblical. Genesis talks about that ezer kenegdo, that suitable. It's like
Right.
you're different at the point of weakness, and so we attract the people because they're different. And so I guarantee you, in each of your relationships, and there's one of you who likes to spend money, and one of you likes to save money. Mm-hmm. One of you who worries about right now, and one of you who's always thinking about the future. One of you who's extroverted, one of you who's more introverted. And like we don't pick these people because they're like us. Now, we don't know that at the time either. It's kind of subconscious, but that's who we end up with. And so, but that's also what we like about them. That's also what causes the friction. It's because the longer we stay with them, the more we want them to be like us. I'm a morning person. I want my wife to be a morning person. 18 years, she's still not a morning person. I've tried to. That's not who she is. And so that's at the core of it. There's some other factors too that we'll kind of get into. I'll let y'all respond to that.
I think that's well said. And I think sometimes we do want our spouse to be like us in a lot of ways, and vice versa. And when there aren't that way, to your point, it does create a friction between the two of you. And how do you handle that? You know what I mean? So I think I actually have to agree with that. And the reason why I say it puts pressure on you is that what are you going to do in light of that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Now that she's not what you thought she was, what do you do next? Because oftentimes you don't think about that because you already have an idea of what our marriage is going to look like.
Yeah, and you don't discuss it beforehand a lot of times.
Facts.
Maybe if you did premarital counseling, you might have talked about it, but nobody's really, you don't really know until you get in it.
Sure.
But you don't have that discussion because you're just so in love that you think it's just going to all work out.
Yeah. Love don't mean jack.
One of the books I recommend, and it was a friend of mine wrote, it's called Love Is Not Enough. Love is not enough.
It's not enough. It really isn't.
It's not enough.
Feels good though, but it's not.
It really isn't. I mean, it's important, but definitely
Well,
not enough.
y'all know when we had our list with like attraction, connection, and compatibility, we threw out love.
Yeah. When vetting a person. Yeah. Yeah. I have loved so hard girls who were not for me.
Same.
That's the only,
I'm talking about I loved them so hard.
that's the only kind of girl I love.
That's real.
If I could just love us across the finish line.
If you want to actually love me back, I want into that. Like, hold on, what you trying to do? You trying to reciprocate? You want to take your love on somewhere?
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're going to drag them across the finish line with your love.
But I love
Lord knows I tried.
I did
Lord
too.
knows I tried.
I did too, and so, and like I said, you don't know what you don't know, and when you get in close, that's when you start realizing that we're really different. Like you can even talk about the stuff when you're dating, but it doesn't really. Like one of the things I ask couples to do, and I just do this to torture them, is like, hey, go make a budget together. If I ask you to go home and make a budget with your wife right now, would that be something you'd be interested in doing?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I would accept the challenge, but
Yeah,
I wouldn't go hopping
fun.
and skipping.
It wouldn't be my idea
my
of fun.
gosh.
Yeah.
Because that's where your values clash.
Right.
Where should we spend our money? Because that shows where your values are.
Right.
And like my value is I don't want to spend any money.
Exactly.
I just like seeing it. I just like seeing it stacked.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I don't have to go on a vacation every year. I don't have to do. I just like to see it stack. And it's like, oh, it feels so good to see all this. Look at all this security stacking
We
up.
talked
in
about
account.
that. We
Yeah.
talked about that.
Look at all these investments. Because I just like that. Because for me, marriage is about security and stability.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me. While you there, are you familiar with James Sexton?
Her name sounds familiar.
He's a
but-
divorce attorney.
Oh yeah. I've seen interviews with him.
Dude going viral, just crazy in terms of he describes marriage as a technology, right? And technology is designed to solve problems.
Yeah.
So throughout time, marriage was a solution to some of the problems people had because there was a dependency on each other. So what he's talking about now, he's referencing the divorce rate in this clip that I saw of him, and he talked about how you may have heard this, like, I think we're up. I think due to COVID, divorce rate is now up to 56%. He's saying
COVID was hard on.
and so, because it was barely above 50 before COVID, and it spiked to 56%. But then he's saying, what about the people who decides we're just going to stay together for the kids, or we're trying to keep up appearances, or how many more? Another 15, 20%. So he was saying you talking about 76% of people who are just miserable in their marriage, right? And so what he was saying is that he was being kind of critical of the technology of marriage in terms of its failure rate. And while I thought his points was compelling, because he was saying if you knew you were going outside the house and 76% of the time he was going to get hit in the head, you would either wear a helmet or not go outside, right? So he almost said to go through with it on the premise of love is almost the definition of negligence in that sense. Now, where I don't really agree with that is I'm reminded of something that Dr. Miles Monroe said. He was like, when purpose isn't known, abuse is inevitable.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is that we're asking marriage to do something that it wasn't necessarily designed to do based on our expectations. And I think, to me, the reason why marriage in some cases fail is because we're wanting this technology to solve a problem it wasn't necessarily designed for. What are your thoughts on that in terms of purpose and whatnot?
Well, that goes back into the differences because people are looking for different things when they get married. And so, like, I always wanted to be married because I'm lame like that. And so I'm thinking like companionship, friendship, and that's what I'm thinking. But there's also kind of a, security and having a stable family because I wanted a family.
Mm-hmm.
But your spouse or the person you're with, they may be looking for something totally different in that relationship. They may be looking for validation. They may be looking for a way out. A lot of times people get married because they're just trying to get out their house or whatever, or get out of their situation into a seemingly better situation. And so, realizing, and the thing is, you don't realize what marriage is providing you or what you were thinking it was going to provide you until you start having problems. Because I don't think I knew when I was getting into it what I really was expecting it to do for me.
Right.
And then looking back, I was like, that's what I was wanting it to do. And so, there's reasons why we're getting into it that we don't know. And so, like, when I'm working with couples, I'll ask, well, how did you leave home? What made you want to get married? What were the circumstances? What was going on when you got married? And they say, well, because sometimes we're pushed into it without even knowing we're being pushed into it because of the circumstances. Sometimes it's just, well, I got married because that's what we do in my family, and my mom was pestering me to get married, and I just, or, well, I just thought that was just the logical next step. You go to school, you graduate, you get married, just the next thing on the list. And so you're approaching it from a different different ways, and you really haven't examined what a marriage is, or even talk to the other person about, hey, what do we want this thing to look like? Because it can really look like whatever you want it to, but people aren't being honest about, what they want. And, you're talking about marriage, trying to solve for something that there's a lot of that. And I was going to say something, I kind of changed my mind on if I wanted to say it or not. but and that changes throughout time. I'll just say that. And so right now, people don't think it's a necessary thing to even get married, because it's no different than having a girlfriend or shacking up, and it is different because it puts a different kind of pressure on you. And that people are surprised by once they get married. And so, but it's just you're coming at it for different reasons, whether you know it or not.
For two people who are dating and they're serious about the next step, they're talking about it, how do they begin that conversation, or what would be the approach in terms of determining what does this marriage look like? Like what would be some advice or steps that you would share with them?
Well, it doesn't matter what you share, because they're not going to do it. They're not.
This is my favorite type of counselor right here, man.
Because when you're in love, you think things are just going to work out. Even if you actually have real conversations about what it's going to look, once you get in it, things will change, because you'll change. But one thing is to always talk about expectations and try to really be clear on what am I really expecting out of this. When it comes to finances, when it comes to sex, when it comes to the splitting of responsibilities and household chores, and really have an honest discussion about expectations. The other thing is family history.
Oh my gosh.
Know what you want, and it's not saying that somebody that you disqualify somebody because of their family history or anything like that. But just having a conversation about family history might let you know in some of the challenges that, I had a conversation with a cousin of mine last week, and sharing with him some of family history, some of the research I've done on our family. And it made him feel so much better, because he felt like he was doing something wrong, or something was wrong with him. And then once you start sharing him, and he's like, oh, so this is just a challenge that happens in our family. Yep. Yeah. And it happens in our marriages. And so you just know, he's like, okay, so that means I got to work on some things a little bit more. Yep, you got to work harder on that, because it's a particular challenge. And your wife, she's got particular challenges in her family. And it's really hard to see that stuff when you're in it. But if you start having the conversations, you might get a light bulb moment of okay, this is what I'm bringing into. I've got a men's group coming up that I'm doing, and one of the things that there's a class that we're going to do on, hey, what did you bring into the marriage that you didn't? You might not even know. You might have smuggled it in. You might not even thought about it. It's like you bringing something in, and so getting clear about what your expectations are. And what do you think a husband should do? What do you think a wife should do? Because she might be thinking you're going to be doing something totally different, Like my wife, she wanted somebody who was going to love to spend time with her family. And by time, she means all day. I was like, I hope you and that guy are really happy.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be disappointed with me, because I'm not doing it. I'm just not doing it. I'll do something, but all day? I'll spend all day with my own family. Right. And so if that expectation, if that's a deal breaker for you, then, I wish you nothing but the best.
Yeah.
And so just having those conversations.
Do you think sometimes those conversations can help you, because you kind of understand their background? You can help you be, I wouldn't say patient, but you're understanding. It's not, okay, this person is different from me because of this. So I can be patient with them as they're working.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Can that kind of help you as you're working together? Okay, I understand her better now, why she's like that.
It can. It can do that, but a lot of times what happens is you might know it, but you still want them to be something different. And so, because your background is not an excuse either.
Sure.
And
Sure,
so
sure.
it can help you build some empathy with that person. It can help you understand them. And so you're not taking it personal. Okay, this is not an attack on me. You know, she is trying to solve for something else in this marriage that I'm trying to solve for something different. And so it keeps you from taking things personal.
Gotcha.
Because you realize it's not about me. This is stuff she brought in. I got stuff I brought in. So it can't help.
I see what you mean when you said, no one's going to do it. And it took me back to the whole expectations part that came up in premarital counseling for us. Mm-hmm. And we had that same task, like write out all your expectations. We didn't do that. Too caught up in love. And then, God forbid the wrong expectation get written down. What does that do for this, somewhat blissful period of life? Mm-hmm. Do you think that notion, that thought process is the same with a lot of soon to be married or even married couples?
Yeah, because, I'll say this. A lot of times you think things are just going to work because you're in love.
Right.
And it takes more than love. It takes work. And so, one of the things that helps even more than just realizing your expectations is, what are your unwritten expectations? The ones that you're afraid to say. Oof. Or, and like I said, sometimes you don't realize, you may be in your third year of marriage and you realize, I really wanted a stay-at-home wife, and I married a career woman, and I didn't really realize I wanted a stay-at-home wife until she started climbing that corporate ladder and whatever, And so sometimes those expectations, you didn't even know they were there.
Right.
They come up because of the friction. The late therapist David Schnarch, he calls marriage. Marriage is a people growing machine, and like what you were talking about earlier, it grows you up if you allow it to. It holds that mirror to you because you can see where all your immaturities are.
Yes.
Yeah.
It took me years, like for real. But you're right.
Yeah, parenting does the same thing too. Like you may think you're a patient person until you start dealing with children.
Oh.
And so relationships they expose us, and they can be a tool for growth if we allow it to be. Yeah. But yeah, at least starting that. Here's what communication is important. Can you have honest communication? Because a lot of times we don't want to do that. Look, me and my wife, we're both therapists, and we don't even want to have honest communication sometimes. And we say, do we really want to talk about this right now?
And that's rooted in fear, right?
Well, I would say anxiety, yeah.
Okay.
Because that's the other part, one of the other parts that causes friction. So there's the differentness that we're going into relationships with, because we're different people. Then there's the level of chronic anxiety, both in the people and in the relationship. And chronic anxiety is just kind of a way of saying, like, it's our body's response to threats, real or imagined. And so when the heat gets turned up, what's your go-to response? You know what I'm saying? And so it's a combination of, and the third part is emotional maturity. And so it's like a combination of, we're different, realizing how different you are and just navigating that. How mature am I, or we? Because usually we marry people who are on the same level of maturity as we are. Or level of immaturity, the way depending on how you want to look. Now, you may think that one person is more immature or more mature, but no, it's just expressed in a different way. And so, how mature are we? And we can have a whole conversation on what emotional maturity means and looks like, and then how much chronic anxiety are we dealing with here? What's the level of anxiety, interpersonal anxiety, and just anxiety that's in our lives? Somebody in school, you have young children, you got 2 jobs, you got whatever. All of that goes into what makes the conflict more combustible. Not all conflict is combustible. You can have cold wars as well, but that's where the conflict comes in. It's trying to navigate those 3 things, and so, yeah.
Do you think that when it comes to conflict, do you think that obviously it's their most damaging when it's like an explosion, right? Some of
Not necessarily.
okay.
Like explosive stuff doesn't bother me.
Okay.
Like you can throw stuff at me, scream, call me names. That doesn't bother me.
For your clients though, like what have you seen in them?
Well,
Is it a difference there or
conflict doesn't matter. It's how you repair. That's more important than how you fight. So if you're fighting in a way and it's a, quote unquote fair fight, you're not hitting below the belt, and you're fighting in a way, but you can repair afterwards,
yeah.
then the conflict doesn't matter. You can fight every day. If you repair well, it's fine. But if you have conflict and you don't repair, you just kind of like, well, we're just going to not talk about it. And then in 3 days, I'm going to ask you, you want to eat some?
Yeah.
Well, that's not repair. It's an olive branch, but you never did discuss what led to the conflict. And so, I don't know if that answered your question, but it's not how combustible the conflict is.
Okay.
Because like I said, those cold wars are sometimes even worse, because at least with a couple who's fighting, there's some energy there, and you can maybe turn that into some motivation.
Sure.
But if they're just like, if a couple comes to me and they're fighting and it's violent, not like physically violent, but combustible, there's more hope in that couple to the couple who doesn't say a word.
Oh wow.
Because they got some deep resentments. They got some stuff they are scared to talk about. They might have been holding on some stuff for 10, 20 years or whatever, Those are the worst, and they probably got some health problems too from holding all that tension and anxiety and
For sure.
conflict,
Yeah.
And so, so silent stuff is, and I don't have any data to back it up, but it's just like that's going to take a longer time because it's clear they don't want to talk about it.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Any questions, Warren?
Nah, I'm liking the way this is going.
What are some of the things like in terms of some of the challenges that you have just seen from your line of work with people that's been kind of if there's a trend or theme in your line of work, what are some of the biggest challenges you've seen with married couples?
So are you talking topics or are you talking about challenges in kind of repairing the relationship?
General as it may pertain to, I can throw out an example like money problems.
Yeah, that's generally most. Well, I don't say most, but yeah, it might be most, because usually, like I said, you're with them because you're different, and so you have a spender and a saver. And what I try to do with that is just tell couples, hey, this finances is just a representation of your value, what you value. One person values having fun, one person values, being stable and saving for a rainy day, and like I'm the person who, I'm a pessimist. Like the other shoe is going to drop, and I need to be ready. And the thing is, if I wasn't married, I wouldn't even care. I would still be a saver, but there's no pressure because it's just me. But having the couple be honest about what what does the money represent to them? For some people, it's control. For some people, it's like I said, stability. For some people, it's a validation. Like, I want to be able to buy nice things, because increasingly is and I'll say that, I'm trying to think if I've had any male clients, increasingly with a lot of women, and they don't, and here's the thing, they don't know that it's where it is, and they won't admit to it a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
It's money represents what I can post on social media.
Oh gosh.
I need to take vacations. Yeah. I need to look a certain way. I need to drive a certain thing, because I am trying to show a certain lifestyle. And they're usually married to somebody who's the exact opposite. Who's like, I'm not even on social media. I don't, I drive a, 20-year-old car, you know, and now I'm busting, you know, I'm working overtime trying to support this lifestyle because you're not happy because we don't go on the vacations that your friends are going on. And here's the thing, your friends can't afford those vacations either. They're charging them, but you don't know that. You just think, and so it's like this keeping up with it. And men have their ways of doing it too, you know, but a lot of it's not fueled by social media. And so I'm seeing a lot of that. I don't know that I've had anybody admit to that. There's a male version of that, but it doesn't involve money. It usually, a lot of times it involves their career. A lot of men self-conscious about their career.
Yeah.
And they'll be doing well. He's like, I only make $112,000 a year. I'm sorry, man. It must be so hard. You know. But this guy over here, you know, he's made, you know, so I see a lot of that.
Yeah.
Usually they're comparing themselves to somebody in their circle, though, not strangers and stuff. But so, but
Do they eventually end up admitting that at least sometimes?
men admit that right away.
Okay.
Yeah, men, we kind of like, yeah, I'm comparing myself to this person. That's, you know, I think women don't think that they're being influenced by social media. And so I might have had one or two that I can think of admit that, but they don't think it has any effect on them, which is the way social media works. It's real sneaky, you know, and it had effect on everybody, whether you know it or not.
Oh, yeah.
Because it targets you it shows things that they know you like, you know, or if they want to piss you off, they know you don't like, and then it keeps just upselling you, you know. So it's like, one day it'll show you some makeup tutorial, and you're like, oh, I like this. It'll show you somebody who's going on shopping trips, and then it'll show you somebody who's, you know, this lifestyle vlog, and somebody's in some exotic location, and it just keeps feeding you this, and you think that those are original ideas. And it's like, no, they're not original. You know, your behavior is being shaped by what you see. No different. Men have versions of this as well, like what our beauty standards and what we think is attractive. A lot of that is, you know, filtered through what we see on TV and social media, and it just feeds you more of what you like or what it thinks you, or stuff you didn't even know you like until you saw it 50 times.
Right.
A good example is a baby hair trend that women are doing. It is the ugliest thing there is, but they think it's cute because everybody that see on social media is doing it, and it's just like, it's not cute.
Right.
But unlike women, they dress for other women, so they don't really care about my opinion. But they won't even admit to that. But you see it so much. Like I said, guys probably have a version of this. Remember when everybody's wearing a sticker on the hat?
Yeah.
Oh, I hated that so much. If you're out there and you got a sticker.
You made sure you didn't have a sticker.
If you're out there and you grown and you got a sticker on you, take it off right now.
And your pants sagging.
Take this sticker off your hat.
Yeah.
The
It's
pants
just like, well,
sagging.
everybody else has a sticker on their hat. It's just so everybody has a version of that.
Sure.
So I'm not picking on women, but we're talking about finances. But that's come up a lot about. I think
Because that costs.
I think she's doing it for the gram.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, you want to shoot a video in your house, but your house is basic. Well, we got to get a whole new house so I can film in my house and make it look like, because
You've seen stuff like this?
Yeah.
Aspiring to be an influencer and do yeah.
Younger couples.
Yeah. Or in 30s. Yeah. You know, and
I'm out of touch.
but here's the thing: they don't know that that's why they're doing it.
Oh.
Like they think this is just a lifestyle I deserve. They don't think it's being influenced by anything they see.
Right.
You know, because that's how media works. It's suggestive without being, you know. I showed a picture to my wife one time. It was an advertisement, some half naked, curvy woman, and I was like, I see this all the time, you know. And I was just trying to look at sneakers.
Yeah.
You know, and
Facts.
I was like, but they're showing you that because it trying to keep you engaged and looking at it so they can sell more space to advertisers. And so just keep them looking.
Right.
Like, you don't have to have any women, just keep showing me shoes.
Right.
You know, I look at shoes all day. And so I have seen that.
Do you see signs of like some of these issues early? Like I know some people right now who are planning a wedding, and early on you can see like the groom and the bride aren't in agreement on the budget and venue and costs and all this other stuff.
Weddings have always been like that
Okay.
because women go to weddings. And what they saw at other weddings, they had a chocolate fondue fountain at their wedding, you know.
We're going white chocolate.
We're going white chocolate, you know. They had, you know, a DJ and I want a live band, and they won't admit it. I don't know why. And so the weddings have always been like competitive, and you got to remember those women have usually if she's getting married and she's not the first one, she's been in other weddings, and when she was in those weddings, she's been thinking about what she would do differently. Well, I wouldn't do that. Well, I want to do it like that, and so that's
She done
always
put together the Avengers of weddings by the time it's her turn.
yeah.
Goodness gracious.
And so that's always been there, but maybe it's worse now, you know. But yeah, wedding planning is always, you know. I talked to a friend yesterday about. He said we should have hired a wedding planner. Like this would have been so much easier, you know.
Or had a set budget.
Wedding planner and a budget.
Look, hey, if you're out there and you meet a woman and you're able to set a reasonable wedding budget, you just know you got a good one, and you need to cherish her above all women. Look, I'm telling you, my wife was real chill about the budget, like because we were paying for our own wedding. Okay, because nobody in our family got money to be paying for. So she was like, "Oh yeah, she the one. This is so easy." You know, so we made money on our wedding.
Oh wow!
Oh wow!
Yeah, we made money on our wedding when like gifts and you know.
Yeah.
We actually probably made about $2,000.
Nice.
What we
Not
spent.
bad.
But you get married at the park.
No, we got married at the church. That was only $500 but we didn't have a caterer. We had friends and family, you know, who could cook. And hey, instead of getting us a gift, cook a dish. So it's kind of like potluck. So they were just bringing these big old pans because the catering is what drives the cost up a lot of times.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
You could get a
didn't
nice
pay for our
venue
wedding, so I
for
can't even-
$2,000. You know,
Food is
and
gonna be serious.
Yeah,
It's gonna be serious.
And so if you can get the catering down, you can pretty much, you know. So yeah, if you find a reasonable woman when it comes to wedding planning,
That's a good start.
that's a good start. Not saying that you shouldn't marry a woman who has things she wants, because she's been planning this for a long time in her head.
True.
But yeah, that's always a struggle. So
I'm going down a list of things that you may have seen. We talked about money,
yeah,
infidelity.
yeah.
There's so many ways you can approach this in terms of, I mean, obviously it's a bad look, right? But
Yeah.
but like what for people, if people are in your office because of infidelity, I have to imagine there's still hope, right?
Yes, depending on some factors. If you are a black man and are you unfaithful with a white woman, it's probably over. Because I have not seen a sister who can bypass the whiteness of the other person.
Offer.
I never say never. I limited sample size.
But you're telling me you haven't seen that.
Anecdotally, that's in your line of work.
That is a very look. I've worked with couples, and this is going back 20 years ago, 15 years ago, where both people had been unfaithful, but she swore up and down his was worse because it was a white woman, and so that was her trump card. Yeah, but you did it with a white woman.
Wow.
So that may be over. How was it concealed? if the person is just hiding things, you can work on that. There might be hope there. If the person has a whole separate apartment, it's probably over. If they got if they got a whole address you didn't know about.
So using that as an example,
Yeah.
you don't believe
That's
there's anything
wild,
you
bruh.
can do at that point to save that marriage.
That person would have to have so much forgiveness in their heart, because how things are concealed goes to the motive, the intent,
Yeah.
and just how duplicitous is this person I'm married to.
Right.
You will never be able to get that out of your head.
Yeah.
Like, you can see somebody lying about who they had dinner with,
Sure.
or something, or staying at work late. When somebody got a whole separate address, they done sign paperwork, dog, and they done sign legally binding paperwork and got a whole other address for the sole purpose of deceiving you. That's hard to come back from.
I can see that.
If somebody looks you in your eye and says, hey, I promise you, I'm not doing anything. They're just a friend. There's nothing going on. It's probably over. Because when somebody can lie to your face brazenly,
That's a personal therapy need at that point, right?
yeah. And
Sure.
Look, I'm not saying there's no hope, but the chances of that being repaired, because
I'll be honest. What do you do in that moment? Because I'm thinking you in your head, you're like,
Throwing the
to the
towel.
other, like,
I don't think that. Actually, I don't think
like,
that.
what? How do you?
Are you optimistic?
Well, no, I'm saying from you. How do you approach that?
So I'm never optimistic or pessimistic a couple. My job is to be neutral as possible.
Okay.
So I don't offer now, if I see signs of hope, I'll tell them that, but in general, my job is to stay neutral. It's not my job to tell you to run, or or to get out of it, or whatever, or this guy's a narcissist, or that's not. I don't. Because neutral is the best thing I can be for a couple.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: I don't know everything. They might be able to repair it. People have forgiven people for things much worse than sleeping with somebody else.
Right.
But it's hard to come back because that person is always going to remember that you looked them dead in the eye and said, no, they're just a friend. You don't have anything to worry about. I promise you, on my mama's grave. That's hard to come back, because everything you say for the rest of y'all time y'all together,
Right.
Yeah, but he looked me dead in my eye. She looked me dead in my eye.
Yeah.
If you can share, what are some of the top reasons why some people in married couples have not been faithful?
So there's only one reason. And so the kind of counseling I do is called family systems, and it looks at everything from a systems lens, meaning there is that the onus for the symptoms don't just fall on one person. And all families, all relationships have a couple of ways, or more than a couple, 4 ways that they keep things calm. And that's through every relationship. Doesn't matter if it happens, even in the animal kingdom, these 4 things are constant. That's conflict, which is, in this sense, is blaming the other person. That calms you down when it's somebody else's fault. Blaming, a conflict can be like blaming, not taking responsibility, name calling, because it gets the pressure off of you. It actually helps calm you down. Now it pisses the other person off, but you feel better. So conflict, distance, emotional distance, and that could be shut down whenever there's a real conversation has to be had, or you find a way to zone out. And that emotional distance could be drinking, getting drunk. It could be smoking. It could be video games, escaping. It could be leaving the house.
But never golf.
Hobbies, and men, typically that's men's number one is distance. That's our go-to. We distance in some way. I'm a distancer.
We know about you things of Thanksgiving.
Seriously, we remember.
Yeah. And so but another one is triangles. And the idea behind triangles is that a two-person relationship is inherently unstable. You're going to have conflict. And to calm things down, one or both parties will instinctively reach out to a third person. Now, triangles aren't bad or good, but it's like a safety valve. And so, let's say, an innocuous one is, you and your wife have an argument, and you talk to a friend of yours, like, man, she tripping again. That's a triangle. It makes you feel better. You get it off your chest. Now, they're not good or bad, but they can be helpful or unhelpful. Now, if you triangle somebody who's always has your side, like, you calling your mama or somebody, well, that's probably going to have a negative effect. But in the short term, it actually calms things down because you're calm because you've unloaded this stuff. So calling a friend, therapy is a triangle. But affairs are a triangle. It's a safety valve. A lot of times people realize that the times they thought their marriage was doing the best was a time when their partner was cheating because their partner has unloaded. See, triangles shift the anxiety. You ever had somebody who tell you all their stuff and now you feel anxious, but they feel better? Now you're up worrying about their stuff? And so triangles offload your anxiety to somebody else. It's like outsourcing, It's like you send it.
Outsourcing.
Yeah, because anxiety is contagious. So an affair is a symptom of a relationship that has a lot of anxiety in it, and so to unload if you combine that with blame, not you blaming your spouse for how you feel, and there's conflict there, and this other person looks like an outlet, and they calm you down. Like, I mean, before it even rises to infidelity proper, just you're talking to your coworker at work, and it's like, see, she gets me. She sees how brilliant and handsome I am. My wife don't think I don't know. She think I don't know nothing. But my coworker, she always listens to what I got to say. She's taking your side. Well, it calms you down because what you're really running from a relationship is like, I don't feel validated in my relationship, and then this other person is validating me. So, like, I'll ask somebody who's been unfaithful, and I work with men who want to change that behavior. What was going on in your life that made that look like an attractive option?
Most of the times they've seen that behavior
in
other men close to them.
It could be a family pattern. It could be something that was because we only use about 5-6 things to calm down: food, sex, relationships, drugs, alcohol, and maybe now smartphones. And so that's why I take a family history, because I want to know, hey, how do people in your family if you see a lot of addiction or substance abuse in a family, okay, this family uses substances to calm down. If you got a lot of overweight people in your family, everybody got the sugar. Well, this family might use food as a way of calming down. I know my family does. On my mom's side, I use food as a way of calming down. And so an affair is a symptom of the chronic anxiety that's in the relationship that you haven't dealt with. And what makes triangles unhelpful is because you're going to a third party instead of speaking to the person that you should have spoken to. So people will tell me stuff in a session that they haven't told their spouse. And I say, hey, have you told your spouse that? No, why would I tell her that, that I was grateful for that and she was really, I really appreciated that. It's like, well, that might be helpful for her to know. And so triangles cut down on one-on-one communication. And so that's why they can be unhelpful. But an affair is just that. And so when I'm working with a couple or a person who wants to curb that behavior, you do that by getting them to be able to handle anxiety better. Because the hardest thing to do with relationship problems is keep those problems in the relationship.
For sure.
It's so instinctual to complain about your spouse. You go to the, well, people don't really go to hang out in barbershops anymore because everything's on appointment. But, you go to the, barbershop or the bar and you complain about your old lady and you sit, Or the gym. Well, that's a triangle. It's true story. And it's not a bad or good, depending on the feedback you're getting. If somebody's taking your side, they can be putting a batter on your back. But they're saying, what do you? Because I don't take a side. I say, is there any way you contributed to that? You know, is there anything that you might have done or not done that made that other person look attractive? Now, you don't do that right off because people aren't ready.
I was just about to ask that.
Because you're not accusing them of causing the behavior, because it's not about cause and effect. It's about atmosphere. You're contributing to the atmosphere of your relationship. They're responsible for what they did.
Sure.
You know, but is there, are you able to see any involvement? Well, I pushed him away a lot. Well, I wasn't there sexually for him. And so there's things that they did to contribute to the atmosphere of the relationship, because we're always contributing to it.
Yeah.
And so that's the hard part.
I was going to ask you, like, how do you get to, because you said it well, it doesn't absolve the person from cheating and doing their part. No. But oftentimes you're dealing with something that in some cases may have been brewing for a minute.
Yeah. And the thing is, the behavior is the other person's responsibility. But from a systems perspective, both people are immature just in different ways. And so these things don't happen in a vacuum. There's, like I said, family history. There's chronic stress in the relationship. There's your relationship with each other. Sometimes it's relationship with work, because affairs generally happen in particular intervals. Traveling for a job is a popular one. When the woman is pregnant or she's just given birth, midlife crises, death of an in-law. That's the other one. So those are like the four common. And so, yeah.
Death of an in-law.
Yeah, I can see that.
Oh, because
that shifts the nature of your relationship with your spouse.
Right.
And then
because that's going to be the focus for a period of time and not you.
She's
and
grieving.
Sometimes somebody's grieving and depression, that can lower your libido a little bit.
Yeah.
That can lower your desire.
Never thought about that.
And it's almost like you're almost upset that this person is still requiring things of you, and you're in this. I can see how that can be a challenge.
Your dad had been dead for 2 months. Don't you think it's time to, start back like, And so, but here's the thing. Most people these conversations are really hard to have. And so to repair that kind of rift, it takes a kind of honesty. And so the way that I present it to couples is, hey, do you want to stay together? Do you even know if you want to stay together? Like, we don't know yet. Okay. Well, just know that, what you had is dead. That's gone. That is blown up. And the only option you have now is to build something more honest, And that's what the work is, building something more honest. So you can have those one-on-one conversations. So where that third party does not look as attractive as they did. And so when a couple is ready to build something more honest, but it makes it a little bit easier, because now you're dealing with the hurt, you're dealing with the residue, but they're able to say, well, I actually get to know my spouse for real and not, and get to know them again, as opposed to all this stuff that's been sometimes it's hidden, but we hadn't dealt with, And so, now I will say this, there is a type of a person who is a serial cheater, and and I don't like this word because it's overused, but they just might be a narcissist and really need a lot of validation. And if their spouse is not their automatic, validation machine, they just seek it out wherever they can get it, And so dealing with that, it's going to be rough. But if a person, usually it is, and that's still a relationship issue that goes back to parenting and family, but narcissism, that trait. But if a couple is ready to build something more honest, then you can. I use the if I have my whiteboard out and I'm getting nerdy, I'll draw a house, and I'll just draw it just destroyed. I'll draw a bridge. This is where y'all at. Y'all on this bridge. Across this bridge is nothing. It's just land. If you keep trying to go back to that destroyed house, you won't make it. because that's gone. That is blown up with this affair that we're dealing with, this infidelity. That's blown up. But if you choose to, you can start building something new, brick by brick, over here, and build a marriage on a different foundation than the last one that was destroyed. But that's hard work though, and it usually takes
just about to say that.
1 to 3 years of work to get back to something that, to build that thing that's more honest. And so if you're not in it for the long haul, it ain't happening.
I like that though, because at the very least, you actually have a strong foundation if it's honest.
Yeah.
Right. I don't have to facilitate the lie anymore.
Yeah.
Right. You can kind of live out in the open with each other if you're building something more. I like that.
Yeah, yeah, and then you can start telling the truth. Well, I wasn't really happy with our sex life. Yeah. Well, how long has that been true? 10 years. Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't happy. Really? You weren't happy either? No, I wasn't happy either.
So now it's almost like, okay, so what do we do?
Yeah.
What do we do next?
And that's the rebuilding process.
Yeah.
How do I show up differently? What do we want this second chance to look like?
Can those conversations happen outside of therapy?
I don't. It may not be therapy, but I don't know if those conversations can, because you almost need at least an outside person, maybe not a therapist, but somebody with some wisdom to help you see the big picture. Yeah. So it's probably possible, but it's so hard when you're in it because you're hurt, and so you need somebody who's not in it to be able to look at the landscape and the destruction, and start asking questions about, when did you know you were having problems, and when did you really start to have problems? Well, I knew I had problems in 2012, but they really started in '97.
Right.
And those conversations, if somebody is, like I said, has some wisdom and kind of know what they're looking for, it can happen. I don't know if a husband and wife just talking amongst themselves can white knuckle it and get there. I don't know. Depending on what the offense is.
Well, yeah, and it depends on them too.
Yeah, yeah.
I just thinking of a situation where that conversation needs to be had.
Yeah.
But neither party's willing to go seek counsel. I was just optimistically curious if there's anything that can facilitate that, or at least get you on the road to that.
Yeah. Well, sometimes what people do, they'll just stuff it and just and think they can move past it on their own, but they don't. But they really don't. Here's the thing, and the thing about systems theory counseling is that it only takes one person to change a relationship. You just change how you function in a relationship, and by doing that, the possibility that the system changes too, because you're always working on your own emotional maturity, and when you do that, the system has the potential to rise to your new level of maturity, and so you don't have to do marriage counseling per se. So there's a possibility, and I've worked with couples where they both came to in the first one, and then the husband dropped out and said, I'm not doing it anymore. And I told the wife, I said, well, look, if you want to continue coming, I'll continue seeing you. Like, you can work on your marriage by yourself. And she said, okay. And I worked with her for 5 months maybe, and her marriage got better. And she said, I thought you were trying to take my money when you said I could work on marriage by myself. But the only thing she did was she changed what she was bringing into the marriage,
If we ever have a podcast on that, can you invite me to be the guest? I can talk all day about that.
Yeah.
Just because, I've lived it, in terms of like really looking under the hood of my own self, connecting some of my behaviors and actions to stuff. And I've seen it transform our marriage, but it started with me.
Yeah. So, and when I tell couples, is first session is I always give them this speech of, hey, couples co-create the problem. So we don't do heroes and villains in here. There's no bad guy, good guy,
Well,
Nope.
That's not conditional?
No condition. Because once you see somebody as a hero or villain, What are you gonna do with that?
Well, wait, you just told me my guy that can look you in the eye and lie to you. You mean to tell me he's still not the villain?
If you see him as the villain, you won't look at yourself long enough to make the necessary changes. You'll just focus on them being the villain. It's just not helpful.
That's a bar. That's real. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you have to approach the work with some kind of objectivity. It does not mean that that we don't take responsibility. It does not mean that people don't, to talk about their portion of what they did. But seeing somebody as a villain, you don't get to know, the real them. I get, like, you see this in families where there's one person in the family who's the villain. I guarantee you, if you actually went and got to know that person, you will walk away with a different idea of that person.
For sure.
Now, they still may be somewhat unsavory, but you would at least understand, like, well, I can see how they got there.
Right.
Because villains play a role in families. It causes families not to have to look at their own stuff because they can just point to everybody.
Low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Much, yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, it's him and his drinking. And he was like, well, if I lived with y'all, I would have drank too. But it's easier for the family to look
Told you, I like this guy, man.
It's the problem.
I like this guy.
What you doing next week?
And so we don't look at other people. We focus. So that's the other thing. Not other focus, self-focus.
Right.
What are you bringing in?
What I'm hearing from you is that no matter, obviously there's accountability to go around, but no matter what's going on in the relationship, there's work for you to do.
Yeah. And what I focus on is each person doing their work and not trying to look at everybody else's paper.
Gotcha. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, stop looking at his paper trying to see what you do your work over here and he's doing, because both people are doing the same work. It just looks different. It's all about growing up and being more emotionally mature, but it looks different. The person who's hurt has different work and actually more work to do than a person who's the unfaithful partner. Now, it may look on the surface that the person who's unfaithful has more work to do.
Yeah. I can see that.
Resentment,
right? Like resentment, trust, like a lot of things. Like I can understand.
The person who's betrayed because they have to force their body, who now sees you as an unsafe person, they have to force their body to go back home to you, to talk to you like an adult, instead of hitting you in the face.
Have sex with this person, like.
Yeah, if you want to I don't know where you been. You might expose me to something. I don't want, they have a lot more work to do, and it's going to feel unfair. But
sounds unfair.
Well, and I tell them straight up.
This is why this is tough, bro. This is why this is tough.
I don't sugarcoat it because they need to know, like, hey.
When he says build something honest, that's real rap.
Yeah.
That's real talk.
I'm like, hey, this is going to suck.
That's real talk.
So you got to decide, hey, do I really want this work?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Because, like I said,
I never heard it that way, but it makes sense now that you explain it.
Yeah. If you walk by, let's say you a kid and you walk by a house and every time you walk by, their dog got loose and chased you. Let's say the dog dies. How long would it take you to not tense up a little bit?
Walking by the same
house. Yeah, and then let's think about the impact it has on that person when they see other dogs.
Yeah, that's what the betrayed person has to deal with. Their whole body is like, I don't trust you. I don't trust you. I don't trust a word coming out of your mouth. I hate looking at your face. And they have to be like trying to be civil, at times, or that's a lot of work. That's exhausting to try to look to somebody who was keeping something from you, and depending on how they kept it from you, So yeah, they got more work to do.
So let me. I want to pivot. I think this has been a good talk. I'm pretty sure people who've dealt with this can help them, right? I want to talk real quick about. I mentioned this in our series about vetting. Our most latest one, I talked about different stages of life. in a marriage when the two of you come together but are going through different stages, menopause, sickness. I'm sure those things bring unique challenges to the relationship because it's a disruption of whatever y'all had going beforehand.
Yeah.
Is how are couples how can couples manage those types of situations?
Well, it's the same way that you manage so Bowen family systems theory, the kind of stuff I do. The answer to every question
It's the same.
is differentiation, emotional maturity. And I hadn't really explained what that looks like in this system, but emotional maturity is, one, being able to distinguish between my thoughts and my feelings. Because when we get anxious, they kind of, we think with our feelings and we feel with our, and we feel with our thoughts, and it's all jumbled up and we don't know what's going on and we're kind of confused. And so being able to am I thinking this or feeling this, or what's going on with me? Being able to have that emotional intelligence and realize what's going on. That's one part. Then it involves being able to separate your thoughts and feelings from the thoughts and feelings of other people. And so a lot of times what we do is we're reading into what we think the other person is thinking or feeling instead of just asking. Especially when we get close to somebody. I've been married to you for 18 years. I know what you're thinking. Like, no, you don't. Because we stop being curious.
How do you break that?
Asking questions. Curiosity. Asking questions.
But I don't have the courage to. Because I'm so bought into what's up here.
So curiosity starts with self. That's the first thing. So before you're curious about the other person, you have to be clear on your own thinking. And so, I'll do an easy one. Let's talk about communication, right? You're talking about communication, and that's
I don't want to talk about communication anymore after the way you did me when we opened this up.
Well,
I'm joking.
because it involves the same kind of mechanisms,
Right.
And let's talk about nonverbal. Like you get couples sometimes, and like I don't know if any of y'all have these in your household. Nobody's that way. Well, nobody's that way in my house, but the tone police. We're real sensitive to tone of voice.
Undertones.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
And so
Yes.
curiosity might look like, why am I so sensitive to tone of voice? Why am I so sensitive to volume? Like I can hear people yell all day at the game or all day and it doesn't bother me. But when they raise their voice a half an octave, I'm ready to put the gloves on. And so being curious about why you're sensitive to certain things.
We have one of those people in my house.
Okay. The tone police?
Yes, and that person is not in the studio.
And I'm not
right
going to be
now.
honest. Tone police annoy me. I'm not going to lie to you. But I'll tell couples, I'm like, are you being a tone police? Is that really how you want to spend your time, policing somebody's tone? Because it's like, grow up. That's what maturity is. I wouldn't say that, but the remedy is grow up.
I'm saying that tonight.
Yeah.
I'll see you on Monday.
In your opinion, is that a deflection from what if the person is, let's say a person is talking and they're really expressing, is that really a deflection? Or can it be a deflection?
It can be. It can be a way of not dealing with the actual issue or the content of what they said. But a lot of times, no, people are really sensitive to it because of maybe how they grew up. In my house, we grew up and everybody was loud and nobody really cared about volume. Like nobody was like, so I'm not yelling at you. I'm just loud. This is how I be. This is what we do.
No one yelled at their house.
But the thing is, they marry somebody who everybody uses their inside voice. Two loud people generally don't get married.
Why won't you look at me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, two quiet people oftentimes may get married, but two
Really?
loud people, yeah, because it's possible that two loud people can get married. It's not unheard of, but generally there's one who's loud and one who's quiet.
But the two quiet people don't know what each other's thinking because I'm sorry.
Well, the loud people don't either because you think you know them because you do know them fairly well, but the closer you get, the less curious you are.
Yeah.
So you already know what they're gonna say when you say this. Because a lot of what I do is show couples their patterns. It's like looking at one of Kathleen Smith, who's a therapist. She always talks about don't look at the personality, look at the patterns. Because the personality blind, it's not the character flaw in the other person. Don't worry about that because you can't fix that anyway. You know, stop looking at the other person and thinking their personality is flawed.
That's good.
Look, what's the pattern? Well, the pattern is I say this, they critique my tone of voice. I say, what tone of voice? And they say, that tone of voice. And then I get mad and I walk off. And then we don't talk about it. And then 3 days I ask you want something to eat. You know? And so what you do is you work on doing something else in the pattern. You know? There you go with that tone. Okay, hey, let me try to say this in a way that I can be heard. Let me change my tone. Or the other person can say, hey, I'm not going to be reactive to their tone. But somebody has to do something different in those patterns. And when you change those patterns over and over again, you start realizing, okay, we're just locked in a tug of war. It's not really a character flaw per se. They're just a different person. You know? I'm not sensitive to tone. You can cuss me out. You can call me out kind of names. You can talk about my mama. Won't bother me at all. But if you ignore me, now we got problems.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people like that who register intensity as love. It's like if you're quiet, you don't care. Okay.
Big time.
You grew up in chaos?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's usually who.
I grew up in a loud, highly emotional environment.
You don't care unless somebody is screaming and neck veins popping out.
That's
if
like,
somebody is quiet, you're like, you don't care about me.
That was the basis of year 1 through 3 of our marriage. Like, because my wife is so quiet. And I'm like, oh, you don't love me.
Yeah. You ain't even thrown nothing at me yet. What kind of love is this?
Wow, that makes
I have not dodged not one lamp since we've been married. You know?
No, I'm going deep. I got to keep it on the surface.
But these are real patterns, and it's like
that's
and you're
awesome.
seeing this is what you see.
Every couple has a pattern. Every couple has a pattern.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
Like me and my wife, neither one of us are yellers. You know, if I get to the point where I yell, like, you just go ahead and call the police, because that means I've lost my mind. Like, I'm not a yeller. Like, you know, I can think of like 3 or 4 times that I've yelled anywhere in the vicinity of my family.
Yeah.
We have cold wars. We just stop talking.
Ooh. That drives me crazy.
Yeah, we have cold wars, and then, you know, and so to break that pattern, that means somebody has to say, hey, are we good? What's going on? That curiosity, you know, because lots of you won't even know if anything's going on. And so to stop a pattern, you got to know what it is.
Right.
And then you just kind of do tweaks and see what works. Okay, I'm going to try this time. I'm going to try this time. What would happen, and instead of coming home and pouring myself a drink, what would happen if I came home and gave my wife a kiss? Would that change anything if I did that for like 3 weeks straight? Maybe not.
Is yes. No, the answer is yes.
Well, it might.
It might.
It will.
Well, it might.
Yeah.
It might.
Well, here's the thing. It may change something, but it was like
expectations,
what will
right?
change?
Like you can't. Oh, this is definitely. It might.
Whoa. I'm not saying it will change it for the better.
Yeah.
I thought your question was, will it
will change
change
something.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It might
It will
change the
change
pattern.
something.
It's like,
It's a new pattern.
Here's the thing. She might not even notice, and if she does, he chose me over whiskey. He came home, you know. You know.
That's a low bar.
I don't know. Depending on the whiskey.
It depends.
Yeah.
You were either about to pivot or wrap this thing up, but I had another
this
question that I just cannot.
or is this
I got a
Jack
question
Daniels?
too, but go ahead.
Okay, you want to flip a coin or you want to do an old-fashioned
Ask your
arm
question.
wrestle? Okay.
Rock, paper, scissors.
We didn't even get through all the stuff. Y'all trying to wrap it up.
No, I didn't know because I knew you were.
Just splice it up into 2 parts. We can keep going.
I don't tempt us. Go ahead.
Love languages. You believe in them or nah?
So love languages are a good diagnostic, but love languages smuggle in expectations that require the other person to be different. You know what I'm saying?
This hurts,
And
but
so-
go, keep going.
So I am and I'll show you how this works. I am a quality time person.
Yeah.
So you don't have to, you just hang out with me. You can, sit on the couch while I'm playing video games, go to Target with me. I'm real, just hang out. That's my love language. But if I'm using that to try to change my spouse, you should do this. Well, now what are you going to get met with when you try to change another person?
Resistance.
Resistance, unless that's something they want to do. And so another way of approaching it is, if I want quality time, then I need to plan something to do with my wife. Start with self instead of,
You should come hang out with me.
invitation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Acts of service. You should help me empty the dishwasher.
Well, anytime you're starting with, so
You like if you're
So-
when I said that as an example, that was I was
Yeah.
saying that's what not to do.
so
I
Yeah.
thought you were saying
So
that
you-
as a remedy to
No.
So
Oh,
No.
thank you.
see, you should is other focus. It's not self focus.
Yeah.
Self focus will be like, hey, I really appreciate it when you help me with this, with the dishes. That's self focus. You're not trying to change the other person. The focus is on you. I appreciate when you do this. Hey, honey, can you help me with these dishes? That comes from a different place than you need to.
I got you now. Okay.
Because the expectation is not to change the other person in that one of them. What you're doing is you're asking for assistance, which is different than giving a command. Because if you want me not to do something, tell me to do it. And all my immaturity comes out.
Right.
I'm a Leo, I'm a firstborn. Telling me to do something?
Yeah.
Do you think affirmation too, when a person helps you with that, also encourages that person? Like, man,
Yeah,
listen, I appreciate you
gratitude.
so
Everybody likes
much when you do this. Like, I love it when you do da 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 with me.
Yeah. Explain when somebody catch somebody doing something right. Hey, I really appreciate this morning. This could have went bad. This could have went left, and I saw the maturity. And you took me to the side and said, hey, it's gonna be all right. And compliment, telling somebody, hey, this works. And also that probably goes outside your normal pattern, because we don't say gratitude. If gratitude is not a part of your relationship, that could be breaking the pattern of just keeping silence and expecting the person to be okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're supposed to do that. Why am I giving them gratitude for that? Well, because a good relationship has gratitude in it, whether they know you. Like my wife never has to tell me she loves me or anything like that, because I'm not a words of affirmation person. I'm a quality time person. But if she does express that, I'll still say, I love you too. I appreciate you telling me that. I probably don't say that I need to hear it enough, and I try to act like I know, but it's still special when I hear it. And so appreciating that the other person that's appreciating the differences. It goes back to navigating the differences. In a relationship, you're interdependent. And so, there's nothing wrong with giving the other person what they want, but if you try to demand it, that's when things go awry. That's when you have fights over money, fights over time, fights over sex, because nobody likes to be managed, and nobody likes to be bossed around, unless you're into that kind of stuff.
Fair disclaimer. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for that.
Before we get to this next part here, what I want to do is ask you this. Unfortunately, people look at counseling in terms of break in case of emergency. Is there value to people treating a marriage counselor like they treat their doctor? You may have a yearly checkup. You know what I mean? Like, you could come in and like kind of fine tune things as you go along in your marriage. I think people do premarital counseling.
Yeah, I have people who do that, who do
they-
checkups. I will say that can be very helpful. As long as, because what people do, and I'm not saying I'm the best counselor out there. I know counselors who are way better than me, but it has to be the right counselor. Because so for instance, if you come into my office and you want to have a counseling session, and the whole time you're complaining about your wife, like that's not gonna fly with me, because I'm gonna put the focus back on you. Is there any way you contributing to that behavior? Have you told her that you don't like these things? Or what have you tried to change your relationship? I'm gonna keep putting the focus back on you. But if you get a counselor who's just amen, yeah, man, I know what you're saying, man. Women, they be like that. Well, that's not helpful. And so counseling can, and there's been a discussion about this lately, is like counseling can do harm too.
Can I ask you this question? Is people actually go to a counselor to talk about their other spouse?
Yeah. They go to vent. They have venting sessions.
I didn't think that was productive.
Are you being sarcastic?
Well, here's the thing. One, we like to get paid just like everybody else. And if you want to spend 50 minutes arguing, there's some counselors who are fussing about your spouse. There's some counselors who will look at that as, I'm being empathetic because I'm listening. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
And I'm listening to you, and I'm in a non-judgmental place. Now, see, I'm not non-judgmental. I'm neutral.
But not everyone is neutral, though, to your point.
Because counselors have different philosophies. And so systems people, you're most effective when you're neutral.
Okay.
Because the client is able to work things out for themselves and able to interact with you in a way that if you are, let's say you come to me and I'm not neutral. Let's say you come to me and you have a marriage problem and I'm like, you're right, dog, man. Yeah, look, I don't see how you put up with that, man. Well, I'm actually doing harm by agreeing with you. I might be doing harm by disagreeing with you. And so what I would do is like, well, what are your options? Complaining to me is probably not going to fix the problem. So what are we thinking here? We'll go back. Was there a time when things weren't as conflictual? Okay. Well, what has changed since then? Now one of the exercises I give people, hey, write me a 5-year timeline, the last 5 years. And bring it back. And what they'll do is they'll write all the deaths, marriages, weddings, sicknesses, change of jobs, any major events that went on, even historical events in the last 5 years. And then we'll talk about it. And what they do is they realize, like, oh, man, we've been through a lot. No wonder we're at each other's throat. Like, the anxiety is through the roof. And so a good counselor will push back in a way that's productive, and not just let you bloviate for 50 minutes about what's wrong. They'll try to not necessarily hold a mirror to you, but try to help you look at the problem a different way. And that is, the problem is not your wife. And even if the problem was your wife, who can you control?
Yeah.
If you can, and I say that, if you can control your spouse, you would have done it already. So what are our other options? What can you control? Well, I can control how I respond. Okay. I can control what I do. Okay. I can control, if somebody's unemployed, I can look for a job. Okay, these are things you can control. Go try some of those out. See what happens. But what's always off limits is controlling the other person.
True.
And so a good counselor will help you do that. But not all counselors, one, are trained in working with couples. Sometimes people just they'll say they work with couples, but what they really are thinking they're doing is just like basic conflict resolution, or like teaching you how to communicate and like use iMessages, and that stuff can be helpful, but the problem is usually deeper than communication and deeper than conflict resolution, because they might be fighting over something that's really important, and that's why the conflict is there. And compromise doesn't fix everything. And So yeah, coming in and getting checkups and like regular, I have people do that. They'll pop in every 3 months, and
the reason why I said what I said, because I know you was like, are you being sarcastic, is because what's the likelihood you're running to an Immanuel? Like that part scares me, and there's not another person there.
That's real.
See what I'm saying? Like
You got to shop around.
that's risky, in my opinion. If you're going to do that, like that's a blessing when they happen to find someone who has that approach.
And I will say that well, I don't have any data to back this up, but I'll say that most counselors are pretty good at doing that.
Okay.
Unless, here's where the counselor's own emotional maturity comes into play, because systems. So the idea is that a family is an emotional unit, and so everything that affects one person affects the whole whole family, the whole emotional unit. There aren't Walker's emotions over here and why. No, they're all interconnected. Well, that happens in therapy too.
Okay.
And so if the person's issue, like if somebody comes in with an issue that's touching on some of my issues, and I'm not aware of it, that causes problems. And so because now we've formed, if I've been seeing you a while, we're an emotional unit too. If I'm not able to keep my neutrality and objectivity. And so even a good counselor can get pulled, let's say you're working with a couple, and I'll say I've done this before. When I started back in 2005, and I did not have the knowledge to be working with this particular couple. And if they're listening, they're probably not. I'm sorry. But let's say your marriage, and I wasn't married then when I first started, but let's say your relationship or your marriage and your counselor is sexless, okay? And the couple come in, and that's one of their issues. Well, if you're a man, you may think that your job is to get the guy laid. You might not even realize it, but you're rooting for him. Like I'm trying to get my player some,
Just off the bro code.
Yeah. Or just
you can
Or man law.
you can almost just
a man's going to empathize with that.
Yeah. And before you know it, you've lost your neutrality, and now you've picked a side. And so most counselors unless their kind of counseling is built on my job is to be empathetic and and feel what they feel and hear them without any pushback. Most counselors are probably good at being somewhat neutral. But if somebody has knowledge of how relationships work, and they have some kind of framework for dealing with couples, they're probably a safe bet. But if somebody just says they work with couples, and you ask them, well, what kind of framework do you use? Ask them that. If they don't have a specific framework for working with couples, I use Gottman. Okay. I use internal family systems. Okay. I use Bowen family systems. Okay. But if they're just out there, just might be more difficult.
Okay. You good?
I am. Oof.
Like you got anything? Good?
I'm good. He helped me out. If you're cheating, it's not really bad. You're just forming triangles. That's right.
Don't answer that.
Please don't. Please don't.
Well, we don't look at anything as bad or good, positive or negative.
You can stop right there.
Yeah. Not because it isn't. It's because once you do, you've chosen a side. You're no longer neutral. This behavior is bad, and now it's my job to stop it.
But if you form a triangle, it's stable and it's safe.
It is stable. Well, it might not be safe depending on the woman or the man. It might not be safe. My wife formed a triangle, probably not gonna be safe. I'll tell you that.
Do it at your own peril.
Yeah. So it depends.
Black, I'm gonna ask you, after hearing this, you're a single guy. Does this scare you away from marriage any?
No, this is all good information.
Okay.
Cool. Listen, we're probably going to do some extra stuff here.
We are?
Yeah, he got some. He got. Did you see this? Did you see the iPad he came in with the outline and whatever? We ain't even crack.
Yeah,
he only opened his iPad once since he's here. He got a whole bunch of stuff to cook.
Yeah.
We hadn't talked about what sexless marriages or.
I had that on my list.
Well, why can't we talk about it now?
I don't think we have enough juice. Or do we?
I don't know. What does it look like? I can't see.
I mean, we're 2 hours and 1 minute in
Okay.
with 33 minutes of wasted stuff.
Oh, okay. I didn't think about that. I'm like.
It wasn't wasted. It was used for a different purpose.
That's all.
Okay, so we'll post it, right?
No,
A different purpose is what.
not a public purpose.
We want to thank you for definitely coming through. We may even sneak in a part 2 of some extra stuff we're probably going to shoot, but we want to thank you guys for hanging out with us at the THA Tipping Point. Subscribe to us on YouTube, guys. Hit like on the video and hit us up. Follow us on Twitter, X, as well as IG. I'm Caesar Walker. This guy. Oh yeah, and share this video as well. Share this video as well. I'm Walker. He's Ronnie Gatry. He's Black, and we're the Tipping Point Podcast. Thanks again for watching and listening.